Welcome to TradeNBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 11th of February. Well, second time in a row here, hitting that 61.4580 range and unable to stay afloat above it. And we, of course, had that wonderful CPI inflation report and came in well above the rumor that they were trying to spread that it was going to come in lower, and in fact it came in much worse than expected, but probably not a big surprise to anyone who's actually been out there buying anything. Flipped everything around, went from pretty strong upside to that pivot, not quite below the 25. That will really cement a dip we would expect to be down by the 38% at that point. Like I pointed out before, no steel reset. Though you had everything you needed from dip of orange and potential of red rising. Still is rising, slightly right there. And it's kind of a precarious spot because you had the improved shakeout forming P2, as you can see right in here, from the DSC red as well. And not able to support that is not what I would call super positive. But the range is tremendous, and it was an interesting day too because not only did we start lower, shot all the way back up to near even, which allowed all the call buyers who bought into this one to jump back in, add in more, and then they just dumped them. So the old saying is, you know, bulls and bears make money, but pigs get slaughtered. So if you didn't trade out of it, you got hammered. And from an NQ standpoint, halfway between the 38 and 23% ugly position, but much closer to that 25. So continuation of that dip and any pivot up of white, and that's going to get ugly because with that strong white lead, it promotes a move towards the 0%, even on the S&P and that, but you've got to have corresponding sell signal from your magenta yellow to follow through with that. As with always happens during sell-off periods, people have to liquidate their hedge positions to cover wrong-sided moves or just to add liquidity. And so gold starting up higher, and especially off that CPI print. But here's the rub of it. You develop now two strong camps. One that believes that because of these inflation numbers and a weakening economy, the Fed won't be able to do anything. And the others think that the Fed will have no choice but to do something. Here we have the euro flattening out from its peak. You get a strong move upside for the euro, but then started to fade pretty quickly. And here we have oil still holding up at that high. That is not any reprieve, and the fact that it's been going on now for nearly a month at these extended levels only going to make things worse. And as expected, now down to the 136 range, and still expecting with the continuation of this, if we continue to see these numbers, a move that's going to start taking us to the 120s. I had originally talked about being in the 128, 125 range, and that's just an indication rates are rising, whether the Fed wants them to or not. Bitcoin was interesting too because it faded pretty strong on the early dip, started to come back, and then as the market sold, it sold. And again, people liquidating to use that hedge, especially off the bounce. Good timing for that bounce, yes, allowing them to have extra resources in this type of a situation. 50K standpoint, so we had that long, got popped out of that with the dip, and then it bounced back off the initial short, but then shorted again, and that one was clean all the way down to the bottom area, so that was very nice. Actually, I can put that look at where that takes us from a performance report standpoint. Still moving along. I mean, it's not at equity highs yet, but very close to them. Been bouncing around with a lot of that choppy trade that's been taking place. From an intraday standpoint, so we started out in the pre-market with the nice move and continued beautifully lower, filling in a lot of the positive exchange. You can see the existing lines that are already pre-established from there. And it was right around in this dip that I talked about. As soon as the market opened, we should see buyers come in to try and lift that back up and even out their option positions, which is exactly what happened. They made a secondary move. This time, though, we had white leading, but the magenta stayed above the whole time. But once it rolled over, cross, beautiful short, went all the way down to the rising 0% at that particular stage. Based for a little bit, and then made a second run that really wasn't able to sustain itself above that 33 level. And once it collapsed below, whether you started a little earlier right there with that dip, adding a cross at the white along with the DOC spread, perfectly fine. And then secondarily, then the magenta continued to break down, and white stayed above. Boom, it just continued, and that had a lot more juice to it as it just continued to stay red throughout. A little bit of pops coming back up, but every time we hit the resistance, we had the other 45, and then we had down below 44.85, so it's a pretty good range between where this was taking place. So I was looking to attack any signs of weakness, and every time we ended up with those pivots lower, was an opportunity to take advantage of weakness in those setups. And then the secondary one, right as we were getting into the last hour of trading, there was no bid to be able to lift things up early. And then once we got to the minus 100, that's where buyers started kicking in at that particular point, and that elevated right back up to the 50%. But as you can see, similar to what I was pointing out before, that magenta starts to get weak. In this case, you need a little bit more oomph from the white end, so it triggers right around the 50% right there into the dark. And you can see it moving right back to that 44.85, but that leaves 68 and 59 ranges further down below. And it was quite an extraordinary day when you imagine that being off 50, coming back to near zero, and then moving down another 100, and then bouncing around from there. Lot of action. So I think it was very exciting, and we were really right on it with the readings from the 8-bar. So all in all, that's all we can hope for. So excellent from that standpoint, and easy to keep us in both to the upside and downside. So it was a terrific day. As always, though, I will continue to update you on the Skype chat, and we'll follow what happens with this. It was interesting because as this was rising, we had that rising gold and Azure here that's usually somewhat bullish. So the fact that it's not bullish as it was coming over, to me, that suggests that we should head lower, at least move towards that 44.68 range. Whether it happens in pre-market or later, we'll see. As always, though, I will continue to update you on the Skype chat. Trade well. We'll talk to you later.